It's the Bird Emergency. I'm Grant Williams. I am a bird nerd. This show is all about talking birds, generally threatened, endangered, rare and unusual birds. Today, we're going to revisit an old favourite of the show. Everyone knows the Forty-spotted Pardalote, one of the rare, amazing birds of Tasmania. But we're going to talk all about the Bruny Island Bird Festival, and I'm joined by Cat Davidson, who is, I've just been informed, not the originator, but certainly the hard-working bod that puts all the pre-festival stuff together. Hi, Cat. How are you? Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Grant. I'm really well, exhausted, but fabulous.
So, Bruny Island Bird Festival, how long has it been going and what are the aims of the festival? Let's talk about that first. You want to have a festival and the question is why, because it's so much work. Tell us why there needs to be a bird festival on Bruny Island.
This was set up in 2010, so we're on our 6th festival now because it's usually every 2 years-ish. And it was established by 3 partners, which was the Bruny Island Environment Network, who's spearheaded by the fabulous Bob and Margaret Graham, and then BirdLife Tasmania, currently chaired by Eric Verler, and then Inala Nature Tours with Tonya Cochran. And they all got together and thought that it would be a fantastic thing for Tasmania to have a bird festival. And where better than the island that's famous around the world for being a site of international birding significance, Bruny Island. And so there's 4 pillars that have always been very strong for the festival. And that's conservation, science, community, and creativity. Because we don't just want to preach to the choir. We want to attract a whole new audience of people who perhaps don't think of themselves as birders, but maybe think of themselves as general nature lovers or just people who are slightly interested in birds. And so if we can hook them in through an art exhibition or a nature market or an event in the evening that's based around music, then we can just gradually get messages out to the wider community about how special the bird life is here and how much it needs to be protected into the future.
For people who are not that familiar with Australia and Tasmania, Bruny Island sits off the mainland of Tasmania, and Tasmania is the little bit that sits below the mainland of Australia to the southeast, the bottom right-hand bit, if you're looking at your atlas. So
we call ourselves the island off the island.
Okay, what I'd like you to do, Kat, is just explain where Bruny Island is located in terms of the Tasmanian mainland, and what are the unique features, habitats? Do you have interesting weather, anything like that? What makes Bruny a special place?
Absolutely. So we are, yes, as you say, the southeast corner. And so we're so very close to Hobart, really. You can leave Hobart and be on Bruny within the hour, jumping over on the little ferry. So it's incredibly accessible. And yet once you're here, it does feel wonderfully remote. And the reason that it's so very special is because of its diversity of habitat. So Tasmania has an incredible diversity of habitat, everything from temperate rainforests to alpine heath, and all in between, dry sclerophyll, wet sclerophyll, salt marshes. And then you take Bruny Island and you condense Tasmania down into an even smaller space, and we still have all those diversity of habitats. The 12 endemic birds of Tasmania, which are only found in Tasmania, are all found on Bruny Island. And you can find them relatively easily because of this closeness of all these habitat types. So one minute you can be looking for the scrub tit in the temperate rainforest, and the next moment you're looking for the yellow wattlebird in a dry sclerophyll forest. And sometimes you can find them all in the one day, especially if you're out with a guide. So it's just such an incredibly beautiful island, but such a rich habitat island. And then, being an island, we don't have the same predators as mainland Tasmania and mainland Australia do. So we do have feral cats, but we don't have foxes, we don't have dingoes, we don't have a big problem with wild dogs. And so those things mean that the birds have much more safety and the mammals have much more safety on the island.
One of the things that often happens on islands, Cat, is that there is extreme pressure from humans just in going about their daily lives, earning a living, etc. How many people live on Bruni, and then what's the activity, the human impact from visitors? Do you know that offhand?
There's about 700 permanent residents currently, but absolutely, Bruni has a long history of humans being on this island. At first, it was the Nuanoni people, and they lived here. And we have a very famous Truganini is from this island, and her father, Mangana, and her partner, Wuredi. And then when white settlement arrived, it initially the explorers. Bruni, you may have heard of, is very famous because many of the explorers landed here in Adventure Bay first to get water, to get wood, to get shelter. And so the litany of names is Furneaux, D'Entrecasteaux, Baudin, Bly, and Cook. And they've all come into Bruny Island and left their influence. And then the whaling industry began, and a timber industry and a farming industry. And the more modern era is the tourism industry, as well as a little bit of farming and timber still being taken. And so the tourism is by far the current greatest pressure, probably on the ecology of the island, as so many people have fallen in love with the island. That does, of course, increase the pressure, not just with the daily visitation, but with more people wishing to move to this beautiful part of the world and therefore clearing a bit of land in order to have their homes. When the people of the island really value what they have here, which they do, and all the rich ecology, then measures get put in place regarding what you can build and what you can clear. And when we're talking about tourism, we're always having very deep discussions with the tourism board of how to market Bruny Island, not just as a day trip destination to come and eat some gorgeous gourmet food, but as an island to savor and to respect and to take 2 or 3 days to move slowly through and really feel the value of the environment here and tread lightly upon this place because it's so very precious and fragile, as you alluded to.
So all of the endemic birds of Tasmania are present on Bruni, but the star of the show is the 40-spotted Pardalote. What's the estimated size of the population there, and is it concentrated in 1 or 2 locations? How's it holding out on Bruni?
You're right. The 40-spot is probably the most famous of the 12 endemics, and sadly that's because it's doing the worst. There's less than 1,000 birds estimated that I last heard still alive, and the populations in many other parts of Tasmania have become hugely fragmented and have decreased. Now there's wonderful people doing very hard work all over Tasmania to try and rectify that, and I know you're talking to Sally Bryant as well, and she's at the epicenter of a lot of this incredible work that's being done. But Tonya Cochran from Inala has been beavering away for 30 years, also trying to save the 40-spot. So one of the strongest colonies in Tasmania and on Bruny Island is situated on the Inala Conservation Reserve. And when Tonya first bought the land, she saw these incredibly old trees that the 40-spots need, and she realized that there was about a dozen birds there, and she's built that number up to at least 100, hopefully a great deal more. We're always liking to be more conservative with our number, and they're doing wonderfully well. And when you stand on the 40-spot platform at Inala and you've got 20 little 40-spots zooming around your head, it's quite breathtaking. It really feels unbelievable that it's possible. But you can get these little pockets of recovery. And so we know it's possible. And there's so many people working so hard to make that happen all over the island and then hopefully recover them in the more tricky parts of Tasmania where it's just got so hard due to human development and clearing to keep these pockets going. But coming to Bruni is people's best chance of getting a 40-spot these days, and going to Inala even more so.
One of the things that I'm always banging on about in any discussion about conservation is that so much of the resources available get focused on one or two species that people are familiar with. How are the Tasmanian endemics doing on Bruni? Are their populations remaining stable? Are they increasing or decreasing?
It's a very good question, and one I wish I had a better answer to, because I'm talking mainly from personal experience from the last 5 years, and also from the general vibe of continually talking to academics and other guides around Tasmania. Some of the birds seem to be doing pretty well out of the 12 endemics. Most people are going to see a native hen when they come and a green rosella, and we hope that those numbers aren't doing so badly. Things like a scrub tit, I'm incredibly concerned. They're brown and they hide away in the dark corners. They're not the glamour birds. And those little dark corners are starting to vanish. So dark, wet, tree ferny areas that the scrub tits like are reducing. So I presume that that will show a correlation in the number of scrub tits reducing as well. But so often when we do just focus on the one bird like a 40-spot or a swift parrot, we're using that as a catalyst to have the call conversation. So my job is a nature tour guide, and it's the best job in the world because I just get to spend all day out in nature with people, and I get to talk about the most fascinating topics. And so if I start a conversation about the 40-spot or the swift parrot, very soon you're talking about habitat loss, and you're talking about ecological degradation, and you're talking about solutions. And so it's a way into a conversation, often by using these very well-known birds to then discuss whether or not the strong-billed honeyeater is still doing well across Tasmania, or perhaps, like many things, it's suffering under habitat loss.
I'm curious to find out a bit more about your work, Cat, but I just want to let listeners and viewers know we are having a few internet issues, but stick with us because it's going to be worth it. And we've got former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull to thank for that. We've got a terrible internet service for the far-flung reaches, and I think that's you qualify for that, don't you, Kat, in that you're certainly not getting inner-city service for your internet. But anyway, there's my political comment for the day, but do bear with us, everyone. Kat, tell us about Inala. I think anyone who's ever Googled tours in Tasmania and whatnot, they will know about Inala Nature Tours. Tell us a bit about the ethos of the business and your role in it, and expand on why it's the best job in the world, because I think a lot of us would like to have a job like that.
It really is, because I have so many friends who are academics and such, and they have so much greater pressure on them all the time. I get to do the really fun part. I get to do the communication part without having to write up the PhD and submit to articles. So I just get to suck the knowledge out of everyone else and then pour it onto the public, whether they like it or not. Now, Inala was set up by Tonya Cochrane. So she was a marine biologist by trade, and she was zipping up and down to Antarctica a lot, and she had a little place on Bruni. And then she just wanted to spend more time on Bruni. And so she started to establish at first just accommodation, but then the guests would always ask her questions about the ecology of the place. And so she would tell them a little bit, and then they were asking her for a tour, and so she'd show them around, and then they'd ask her to show Bruni and then Tasmania. And so gradually her business has built, and then it reached a tipping point of growth where the reputation was so strong that she had to start bringing on guides. And she started bringing on an incredible amount of guides like Nick Mooney, Andrew Hingston, Karen Dick, Catherine Young, and that's just in Tasmania. She has guides all across Australia now. And the beating heart of Tasmania has always been conservation. And so she owns 1,500 acres of land that she is protecting on Bruny Island. And she was doing this at a time when it wasn't the thing to be done, and she was mocked quite a lot for it. And so people would always ask her what she was going to do with the land in terms of what livestock are you going to put on it, what crop are you going to grow? And she'd be saying, no, I'm keeping it safe, I'm caretaking it, I'm protecting it as a large patch of Bruni where the wildlife can be completely secure. it's 40-spot habitat, it's swift parrot habitat. And so every guest who comes to stay in our cottages or go on the tours is contributing to helping keep that land safe. Then on the side, we do wildlife care, lots of rehab for the orphans. We have a foundation that we've just set up. And we also have the Inala Jurassic Garden, which is now a botanic garden, doing lots of conservation work with flora. So we're a diverse company. And pre-COVID, we were starting to run mini tours internationally as well. And the theme that kind of tied them all together, as well as conservation, was Gondwana, because it's such a fascinating topic discussing Gondwana with people. And so we were taking tours to many of the other Gondwanan countries, and that was just becoming a really fantastic element of Inala. And COVID's put a slight dampener on that. But I sought Inala out because of its values. I wanted to work for a company and for a person that I really believed in, who I really thought was doing great work and who I could be incredibly proud to represent without feeling I was not saying some things that people shouldn't know about and hiding stuff behind a bit of greenwashing. So Tanya had very similar values to myself on all these environmental issues, and we can really bolster each other, have each other's backs, keep each other going forward on the tough days, and build an excellent business as well, which employs an incredible amount of local people and across Australia, and gives so much joy to the people who come on the tours, because birding is a blossoming economy. Nature tourism as a whole is blossoming, but birding is just going off. There's so many women getting into birding now, and there's so many young people, and there's so many photographers. So it's a wonderful job, because I'm always surrounded by enthusiastic people who are seeing things for the first time, and I get to see it through their eyes and give them an interpretation of everything around them.
It's a beautiful thing. I've got a few summers on you, Cat, no doubt about that. But when I was a kid of about 7 or 8, walking around with my binoculars and looking at whatever I could spot in the treetops, I was the weird kid. But it's great now that kids are far more engaged in the world around them and their local patch in a way that maybe wasn't so much. I don't know what all the catalysts have been, but it's just great to see. Now, Kat, you said, I think, was it 5 years you've been with Inala?
Yes, that's right. So I came down for the 2016 Bruny Island Bird Festival. I sneaked in as a speaker at that one when Daniel was organising it, and then made sure I got to meet Tanya during that festival, and then put in my CV the next week. She offered me the job the same week, and we moved down a few weeks later. So we were living up in Lamington National Park at that stage. My partner was actually in China when I sent him a text going, how do you feel about moving to an island at the bottom of the world? And he was like, yeah, sounds great.
Very cool. Very cool. Lamington's a pretty amazing place too, but that's a whole different conversation. Kat, let's talk about the festival before we go back to talking about you and your career. I'll walk through. It's a 3-day festival, but there can be a Monday. There can be a 4th day if there's enough people wanting to do the extra tour. A lot of the events are tours that will be led by Inala guides. So let's first talk about Friday the 25th of March. Get the dates in too. Actually, let's do the whole plug right now. 25th of March, 26th of March, which is the Saturday, Sunday the 28th, and possibly the Monday. The website for bookings, brunibirdfestival.org.au. Don't forget the .au, so you can book and express interest there. Kat, tell us about day one.
Day one. So Friday is the gentle ramp into the festival. So early in the morning, every day the festival starts with a glorious beach to bushwalk with one of the founders, Bob Graham. And he just gives a lovely, gentle overview of the birds from on the beach to all the way into the bush and discussing the issues. So many people love to sign up for that first thing in the morning. And then the HQ will open and we'll start to welcome people in. And during the first day, there'll be a couple of Inala tours running at the Inala Conservation Reserve and also on the whole of Bruny Island. But most of the tours are going to be on the Saturday and the Sunday. That's when also the lectures start. So in the evening of the first day, have a get together to welcome everyone, a welcome to country, and then we have a little welcome speech, and then it's just milling about and eating awesome food. But what we also do each night is a bird count, which is really fun. We have these giant lists up on the side of the building with the name of each bird that's possible on Bruni, and anyone in the crowd can shout out which birds they've seen that day. And usually the rule is that 2 people have to have seen it, or a photograph has to have been taken, and then we'll take that as an A-OK on that bird having been seen. And so we just get a lovely list for the festival, and that's really fun part of the evening. But a big element of this festival, and why I fell in love with it, is because of this strong community vibe. Many other festivals that I've been to have always felt very sponsored, very corporate, lots of things being sold to you all the time. This is very much about the people. And so it's chatting with other birders. It's suddenly finding out that you have 7 connections to the person that you're standing next to in the barbecue queue, because it's a relatively small world, birding in Australia, and you always find links and connections everywhere. And with such a diverse amount of people there from the art community, from the music community, as well as the birding, conservation, academic community, it just lets this really lovely conversational flow happen all the time, where it does feel like you've already known most of these people for years. It's a lovely start to the festival, the Friday.
I really like the big lists on the side of the building. I'll try and include a picture of that on the show notes and whatnot for this. It does look like a lot of fun. Nowadays, with people having their phones out, what about if someone records a call? Is that an acceptable piece of evidence to go on the...
We haven't even thought about that. But hey, why not? Recording a call could definitely evidence it. If they know what they've recorded, it would be great. We're going to take people's word for it. This isn't a hardcore list.
I don't know. I don't know if you should always take a hardcore Twitcher's word for it. I think they sometimes might get very excited. Now,
the person in control on the night is Karen Dick, and she will rule with an iron rod, and she will make sure that people are giving her the honest truth.
Very good. Let's talk about all the speakers in a minute. But because I'm a horticulturist, I'm really interested in the Jurassic Garden. And I must admit, I hadn't seen anything about it before. So tell us about the garden. How big is it? What are the amazing things that people can see there? And do you need to be guided, or can you just wander around on your own?
I'm shocked and horrified, obviously, Grant, that you haven't heard of our amazing garden. But she's a very young garden, so not hugely surprised. So Tanya never does anything by halves. She's a woman who goes all in on a project. And so when we thought, let's put a couple of plants in the ground that demonstrate the links to Gondwana, so plants that stayed in Tasmania, plants that drifted off to New Zealand when it broke apart, and plants that went off to South Africa or to South America. When you put them back together, you can really see the diversity of that plant life. So Tanya has a bed, for example, with all the Nothofagus species, all the beeches. And when you put them all right next to each other and really compare, it's just an incredible thing to look at leaf shape change, and some have stayed deciduous and some have become evergreen, and why that's happened and who's pollinating them in one country and another, and is one wind and is one possums. And it's so fascinating to really get into an in-depth look at that. And so she got carried away very quickly, and suddenly she has over 750 species which are demonstrating all these Gondwana and links and these continental shifts. And so we became a botanic garden very quickly. Normally you wait way down the track until you become a botanics, or you have enormous amounts of government funding to set one up. This is just Tanya doing it by herself with a very small crew at the bottom of the world. And 3 years in, we had ticked all the boxes of being an official botanic garden. So that meant that our tiny 5-acre garden could then start trading with other huge botanic gardens from around the world. And we are. And we're doing it with specimens that are in desperate need of a safe place to grow. So in Queensland, there's Mount Bartlefreda, and at the top is the cloud forest. Now that area there is getting warmer and less cloud foresty, and there's some specimens on top of that mountain who need to start being grown elsewhere or they may not survive. And so we're replacing altitude with latitude, bringing them down to Tasmania and seeing how they go here. And some of them are doing really well. So Tanya's already moved into some quite critical fauna, flora, conservation in some of these species. And every day now she's getting calls from people complimenting her on her her plant list and offering to potentially have other species in her garden as a safety net. No, you don't need a guide. You can absolutely just turn up, and it's open every day, and we're getting increasing number of visitors. We appeared on a couple of television shows, and once you've been on Gardening Australia, they put you on repeat quite a lot. So every few months we pop up again in people's feed, and so we'll get another big surge of people finding us, and it's glorious. We do have guided tours available. You can do an hour with someone and really get into the nitty-gritty of the garden. But you must come. It's glorious.
Some on my bucket list. Now tell me, when you did Gardening Australia down there, did Costa come down?
We didn't have Costa. We had Tino because he's the local boy. He knows half the people on Bruny Island already.
Yeah, Tino, the veggie gardener, I think. Anyone who watches Gardening Australia, you probably can find it if you're overseas. It's probably on a streaming service somewhere. Look, let's talk about the link with art and how art is a bridge for those who are not already committed bird nerds to getting involved. And hey, if we can't talk about the art exhibition without you telling us about Lois Bury.
Yes, she's fabulous. So Lois is going to be our artist in residence throughout the festival. And she's going to be painting live at the art exhibition throughout. Now, I made sure she doesn't feel she has to finish this painting in 3 days, but people will be able to enjoy watching her work on it. And she's very well known locally and further afield for her beautiful artwork of birds. But the whole art exhibition is going to be full of not only paintings, but sculptures, photographs, any way that people want to represent birds in art, because humans have always been inspired by birds. And there's birds in hieroglyphs, of course. There's birds on cave walls. It's been something that we've always had a connection to and wanted to express our love of their color, their movement, their shape, the way they make us feel through art. And people are drawn to an image of a bird. It gives them a lot of joy. And we have a tiny wee gift shop at Inala, and it's the paintings of birds that people just can't resist. Even if they already have 20 in their house, they want to have 21.
I think that's pretty normal. You get hooked, and I mean, depending on the style you like, you'll collect everything. A bit like needing to tick off every bird family, I guess. If you like the John Gould, Elizabeth Gould style, you'll always chase it down. I loved all the parrots of the world kind of style. I really like that detailed and accurate style. But yeah, look, it looks lovely. I really like the example of it's got to be a grass owl, I think, that you've got on the website. Is that something where people can perhaps get some tips about being a nature artist? Is Lois a teacher, an informal teacher as well?
She may well be, but we actually have two fantastic elements of the program specifically for that. We have the marvelous Jay, who is going to be doing a nature journaling workshop, and she's made it as unintimidating as possible to hook in people who aren't quite sure if they're an artist at all and they just want to get started. And so she'll be giving really wonderful foundational tips on how to just be in nature and start scribbling down what you're seeing and what you're feeling about a bird without judging yourself at the same level of, is this good enough to be on the wall? Just enjoying the process of making art. And the same with the wonderful print workshop with Real Plant. And so she's got 2 days there where she's going to have full day workshops, and she has a printing press, and she has all these amazing techniques that she's developed over the years for pressing things like feathers and grasses. And then she'll do amazing things, take a shower cap and put it in ink, and then you press it in just the right way and it immediately looks, and then you can put in prints of eggs or more feathers, and you just have a work of art that you've created in 10 minutes, even if you don't think of yourself as an artist. So both these fantastic women are going to be helping people to bring out that inner artist.
And that's on Saturday with Real. Let's see, Real is doing Saturday and Sunday. And there we go. And Jay, now let the Professor Jay Johnson.
Yes.
That's right. And that's on Saturday. All of the locations quite close by.
Everything on me is fairly close by. If someone invites me to dinner in North Bruni and it takes me half an hour to get there, I just think that's the end of the world. It's so far away. So everything on Bruni is fairly close. But we've made sure that we've shared things around. So the exhibition is in Dens Point, which is the top of the North Island. And then the HQ, where a lot of the events and the evening of the festival is happening, in Adventure Bay in the middle of the south. And then we have the market going on at Lunawana, which is around the other side of the south. So we're sharing the love around the village halls and making sure that all the locals are included and not forgotten just because they're in a more remote corner. But all the village halls are awesome and provide such great space. And in COVID times too, we want the biggest space possible so that we can safely allow the most people possible. Because of course, I've had to reduce numbers on everything. And in previous years, I've sold out anyway. So this year it's going to sell out even faster, sadly, because of these reduced sizes that we can.
Speaking of sold out, one of the highlights when you cruise through the program is the Penguin and Shearwater Colony Tour. And when I was just looking, Friday night, visiting the Little Penguin Colony and the Short-tailed Shearwaters, that's sold out, but there's still places available on the Saturday. So if seabirds are your thing, that looks like a journey, an activity not to be missed, especially guided by Dr. Eric. Have you done that tour yourself, Kat?
Yes, I run them all the time. So I do a lot of night tours, and we don't just focus on the penguins and shearwater as much as we love them, but a night tour on Bruny Island gets you also so many incredible mammals. So I'm often out looking for the eastern quolls and the potoroos, as well as things like white wallaby or golden possums. It's a glorious island for all wildlife, but we absolutely always incorporate going to the neck, because that short-tailed shearwater colony is just amazing. When you stand there on the deck and the shearwaters are coming in silently, circling round your head with the spectacular view of the neck between North and South Bruni, it's just so good for your soul. And then who can resist a penguin? Now, March is going to be the end of the season for the penguin. But luckily, there's a few penguins that decide that they're going to come up year-round. So there's always a very good chance of seeing a few coming in. And being there with Eric, who has incredible knowledge and has been a researcher for many years in not only shearwaters and penguins, but so many birds and so many pelagic birds. He's just someone that you just want to be close to ask 1,000 questions, because he knows so much. So yes, it's very popular. I couldn't persuade him to do Sunday night as well, because he wants to go to see First Dog and Kadalka, so he couldn't have all 3 nights.
Fair enough. We'll talk about that in just a minute. I just want to highlight that there are 2 other fabulous tours on the Saturday, and I'm happy to say both friends of the show. Where is the other Cat, the very amazing Dr. Cat Young? Where will she be taking people? And let's see, that one, yes, still going, and that's a morning walk of 90 minutes to 2 hours. So it's a gentle woodland walk, so anybody can go for a bit of a perambulation. With what are the highlights of that?
Yeah, a lot of people think we are one and the same person, maybe even yourself, Grant. She and I both work for Inala, both are in the birding world, but Dr. Cat Young has a lot more academic background than myself, and she is part of the Difficult Bird Research Group from the ANU. And so she has huge breadth of knowledge and is just an excellent guide, a very good communicator. communicator. So she'll be taking people around the quarantine station in North Bruny. Now, North Bruny is drier than South Bruny. When you drive on to the island, the north has got grass trees and lots of open fields. And then once you've crossed the neck, you're into a much denser bush. So she'll be seeing things in that dry sclerophyll forest in the north that maybe you wouldn't see in the south. So maybe if you're getting lucky, a blue-winged parrot could be around at that time of year. But there's also just a really excellent forest for the whistlers and the honeyeaters and the robins. So she's going to have an excellent selection of birds that morning and a really good interpretive style of everything that's being seen. And then once you've done the tour with her, you end up back at the quarantine station, and very kindly the volunteers there are going to be present on the day to take anyone who wishes on a small historic tour of the quarantine station.
That's really important, Kat, to make sure people understand the whole history and the human history of the locations that you're going, because then you can understand the impacts and the effect that we all have when no matter what we're doing, on the environment around us. I really love that you've got a chance of seeing the blue-winged parrot. They're pretty difficult to see. Often they're around us, but they're a bird you don't really notice unless, I think unless they fly past you and you see their little group doing their thing. But anyway, enough of my rambling. Sally Bryan, is it Denny's Hill or Dennis Hill? What's the pronunciation on that walk?
So close on both fronts. You just miss out that ND when you're saying it. Just Dens. So Dens Hill and Dens Point. There was this family with the surname Dens who gifted that land to the community, and now it's a parks reserve and it has excellent 40-spot habitat on it. And so Sally has a long connection with the family, with the place, and of course with the 40 spots. And she couldn't make it to the last festival. So this is a return of Sally to the festival because she's always been a great supporter of the festival. And so we're very thrilled. And yes, that one's selling out incredibly fast because Sally is famous from her show on the radio. So a lot of people would love to meet her as well as learn what she has to say.
Yes, if you're not in Tasmania, you probably don't know that what Sally's done, I think it's about 20 years, speaking regularly on the ABC local radio in Tassie, talking about birds and nature generally, but especially birds. So, yeah, very good communicator. I do notice that attendees will need sturdy shoes and a reasonable level of fitness. So there's a bit of an energetic aspect to that tour than the gentle walk with the other cat, I'm guessing. Is that right?
Yes.
Kat?
Yes, Sally chose the location. I said, where would you like to run your tour? And she picked Dens Hill. And then I was like, oh, it's quite a steep slope. And she said, oh, we'll go slow, don't be worried. So yes, absolutely fine. Birding is a very relaxed hobby, and no one who ever wants to go on a short, sharp walk is birding at the same time, because you're just meandering along, being mindful and enjoying everything around you. So you'll barely feel the hill as you're going up.
That's great. And then it rounds off Saturday night. There's a musical event. Now, what can you tell me about that? Oh, and actually, I'll just make a note. If you want to go to that, you have to go to the event Facebook page. You can't actually book through the festival page. So tell us about that cultural event. What have we got? I can see a highlight, number 2 on the ARIA charts. So, hey, it must be...
Yes. So Simone Slattery and Anthony Albrecht, they came down before and did their beautiful show, which was inspired by Tim Lowe's book, Where Song Began. And this is their next show after that. This is Life on Land's Edge. So they describe it as a musical odyssey to the ends of the earth and back, which is just beautiful. And they both play an instrument, violin for Simone and cello for Anthony, and they play along with beautiful visuals up on the screen of birds. Now, this one is about migratory shorebirds. So the shorebirds are connecting continents and cultures together as they traverse across the landscape. And the Life on Land's Edge will be drawing on both the art of that, the science of that, and the music of that across the ages and blending it all together. It's the kind of thing that until you've actually listened and experienced it, it's quite hard to describe, but it's something that you'll have never been to before. So I hugely recommend coming to that. And yes, booking through their page rather than ours, because they're going to fit in a couple of other locations when they come down. But don't go to those ones, come to ours.
I wish I had have used your turn of phrase when I was speaking to Millie about wing threads, that shorebirds, migratory shorebirds, link cultures and continents. I wasn't quite so elegant, but yeah, they're amazing.
I'm inspired by Anthony there. That's his prose, not mine. I wouldn't wish to take credit.
Good on you, Anthony. I appreciate your turn of phrase. Now, I think, Kat, we've got into Sunday. Now, something which I think is fantastic is what is first cab off the rank on Sunday.
This would be the wonderful Dawn Chorus Walk with Ramit Singhal. Now, this one is brand new to the festival and we're very thrilled. So we've got to know Ramit because he's one of the Inala guides and he's based up in the north of Bruni, so north of Tasmania, not Bruni. So when people ask for tours in the north, Ramit does those for us. But Ramit's famous for his sound work. He has one of those big discs that you see to pick up the sound and have it really wonderfully clear as a recording. But he'll be showing people not only how he does it with his fancy equipment, but how you can record very easily on your phone and still have a remarkable little product with the technology we have these days. And he'll be giving people tips on how to record and just all the things that you need to know about it. And it's something that I know so little about that I'm going to try and sneak myself onto his walk as well. But it's very limited numbers because he doesn't want to have too many people crowding around trying to do this. He's also doing the lecture series. So people can also go to that if they don't wish to do the Dawn Chorus walk. But I highly recommend it. I think it's going to be a brand new, fabulous, and hopefully ongoing addition to the festival.
Ramit's got a lot of credibility because he also has a podcast. So it's called Having a Lark. If you want to have a look and you can't get to the festival, check out Having a Lark on all of your podcast getters and you'll find him there. The thing I thought was great, apart from demonstrating how to use a parabola and recording with directional microphone and whatnot, he also goes through some of the techniques you need to clean up any sound file to highlight the material, the audio material that you want people to hear, and to remove some of the stuff that you don't want people to hear, and also how and where to upload bird calls and whatnot to make them useful for other people in perhaps citizen science or hardcore research. Yeah, that looks really great. And then there's the Bruni day tour, the bushwalk with Bob Graham again, the Anna and Sally and the garden walk. But then this is again morning. Only the early morning session is still available, and that's the introduction to shorebirds. What can you tell us about that session, Kat?
So that's another one with Eric, and we sold out so quickly that I persuaded him to do that second one, which has now still got a few tickets available. So he's going to be positioned at Captain Cook Creek in the middle of Adventure Bay, so very accessible. And he'll be chatting about whatever's around that day, but also the things that you aren't necessarily seeing at that exact moment, but which can be there at other times in the year. But Tasmania and Bruni are the very bottom of the flyway. So we don't get the same huge diversity as you'd ever expect at a broom shore. We have more things that are willing to traverse to the very, very bottom. But we still have some absolute gems like the hooded plover, little tiny soul who somehow manages in the middle of a very popular beach to hang on in there in the middle of Adventure Bay. So hopefully there'll be a few hooded plovers around that morning. But also it can just be a really great site for, say, looking at the 3 different gulls all in the one spot, because maybe a non-birder hasn't even really noticed that we have 3. And once someone's there to show you the features and explain why each one is different and what niche they fill, and maybe some oyster catchers and some cormorants and some swans and some teal and some ducks, and it's always going to have something around at that little outlet where the creek joins the sea. And Eric's the man you want to ask all the questions.
You can't help but get excited when you start rattling off the bird names, can you, Cat? It's just not possible. Just on the hoodies, they're hanging on in a fairly populated site. Does that mean that there's no horse riding on that beach?
I've never seen a horse there, but there is a lot of dog walkers. Now, Bruny Islanders are incredibly good at understanding the issues and keeping their dogs on leashes in the right areas. But sometimes maybe someone who hasn't seen one of the little signs explaining that this is a beach which has hooded plovers on it might accidentally have their dog off leash in that area. So it is tricky for those little birds to not be perpetually scared up off the beach all the time. And of course, for the little chicks to just manage to survive in their tiny little ridiculous scrapes. But BN, Bruny Island Environment Network, Bob and Mark Graham and many other islanders have always had the hooded plover as one of their focus birds that they've been trying to assist. And so, of course, there's excellent signage up. And then at certain times of the year, a little fence around where the nest is being made. Or what has been recently being worked on by James Bunker and the Men's Shed is those little wooden teepees that you're seeing being used, where you can put that down and the bird can use that to not necessarily nest under, though they might, but just to get a bit of shade under and to be really visually obvious to a walker or a beachgoer, and hopefully just give them a bit more protection. So we're trialing those as well on Cloudy Bay, where people sometimes drive. The little spot in Adventure Bay is got this creek that exits, and because it changes shape all the time, sometimes the hooded plovers have to move where they are, not because of human reasons necessarily, but because the creek is now busting out at an entirely different point.
Life's tough when you're a shorebird, isn't it? Sunday night, this is a real highlight. I want you to tell me all about the two featured artists, national treasures. I wasn't aware they'd been elevated to national treasure status, but certainly very funny. I'll let you tell us about Sunday night.
I've always been an enormous fan of First Dog on the Moon in The Guardian and John Kadulka's work as well. They are both incredibly smart men, both very funny men, and both very great artists. And so in the 2018 festival, I managed to twist First Dog's arm, and he came and did a little lecture, and it was insanely popular. And we had it in a little church, and it was bursting at the seams with people who wished to hear what he had to say. And he promised that he would only vaguely mention birds in that speech, but he actually discussed them in an awful amount. Because one of the fabulous things that they both do is that they draw attention not only to all birds being glorious, but in specific birds that are doing very badly. The orange-bellied parrot, or the swift parrot, or the 40-spot. And First Dog, when he did the cartoon about the orange-bellied parrot and about the swift parrot, the amount of people who saw those things that may not have otherwise engaged with it through the medium of humor and through the medium of art was incredible. And he's always been a huge supporter of conservation work and what the Difficult Bird Research Group is doing. So they're both really fantastic men, but also I have no control over what they are going to say that night. I've called it In Conversation With, so that they can say whatever they like. They're already great friends. They did a whiskey tour together of Tasmania. So I'm just going to make sure there's a bottle of whiskey on the table and I'll let them go freestyle. And so I'm guessing birds might come up as a topic throughout the evening, but it could be anything. And I'm guessing politics may be in there. I'm hoping politics may be in there. If anyone follows them on Twitter, they know that they're not shy from stepping forward on an opinion. And so it will be an excellent night.
No doubt. A little disclaimer on the website. Content may be unpredictable. We can guarantee it will be memorable. And I've got no doubt that is indeed true. So that rounds out the Sunday. So there is the potential of something happening on Monday, is that?
It's previously been a 4-day festival, and due to COVID and the uncertainty of whether or not we were even going to run, because normally we're in October, so we've pivoted to March, and we only really made the decision, halfway through January as to whether or not we were going to go ahead. So it's a streamlined version of the festival with a few less events than normal. So we cut it back to the 3 days, but I've made it so that if there is a complete sellout on all the Friday to Sunday stuff and people would really like to do something on the Monday, then I've made sure I've set a few guides aside so that is a possibility. So people just need to tell us that they'd like to, and if we hit a certain tipping point in numbers that makes it viable, then absolutely we'll run some more tours on the Monday, because why not keep the joy going as long as you can?
If people are there and there's things that they want to do, I'm guessing that everybody would be amenable to helping people see things if they missed something because they were seeing something else. Kat, when we were setting this up, you told me that you've done sort of 98% of the organising work this year, but with a history of a festival, you're building up lots of relationships over time and with lots of people who are obviously lending a bit of help here and there. Now, the festival's got a major sponsor, which is the Tasmanian government via Events Tasmania. But I'm guessing, especially in an island community, fairly small community, you mentioned 700 people, I'm guessing there's a lot of local businesses who have helped out to get things happening and maybe supplying venues and whatnot at reduced rates or something. Obviously, Inala is a major supporter, if not officially, of the festival. But here's your opportunity to give a bit of mileage to all those people who have really helped out so that people can look them up, patronise them if they would like. Who's been a big help over your time with
this? Is only my second time running it, so all the credit for all the initial years goes to Marg Graham. She has been the organising tour de force for many years, and then Daniel Sprod took over from her, and then myself, and Marg still helps enormously, so she is a big part of the festival. But yes, I course have so many people giving their time, their expertise, and then a lot of in-kind donations from the local community. In previous years, before I managed to get the funding, which is a regional tourism boost due to COVID this time, the local businesses have been our absolute lifeblood of support. So Hotel Bruni was one of the gold sponsors, Pennicotts was a gold sponsor. Lots of the local businesses on the island, if they couldn't give financially, would absolutely send along a case of cider, a box of cheese, or a voucher for their service. So there's rarely ever a moment where I am not feeling profound gratitude to all the incredible people of this island and businesses of this island for making it such a truly community event. And sometimes when I'm firing out 70 emails in a day and I forget to email someone, they'll email me and just be like, oh, by the way, we'd love to donate something. And so it's just so kind how much people give. With the funding this year, I can relax a little because I can actually not need to ask anyone for anything, because in a COVID year, I really didn't wish to put pressure on businesses which are doing it tough all over Tasmania. And so I have only very gently put out a wider message that if anyone would like to support, we are incredibly grateful, rather than doing the elbow twist that may have happened pre-COVID. So now it's just a wonderful bonus. But when someone signs up to be in the art exhibition or the nature market, I have a little box at the bottom of the form that just says, is there anything at all that you would like to contribute to the raffle and the auction? And every single person has said yes and given something of their artwork. And that is just so generous because they're all often very small operators. And it's just continuously overwhelming how kind people are. And one of the reasons why the festival has such a lovely vibe. And so there is going to be an auction. I'm just going to work out the details of how to run it, perhaps as a silent auction, including it being online a little so people can see everything in advance and do little bids on them. And that showcase a lot of the local products. And it's a way I can really thank people as well, because I can put those images on the website for the next 2 years with a thank you and their business name and the item and a photo. And so hopefully they get some really great advertising out of it, because so many people check the Bird Festival website even when the festival's not on. They're just coming to Bruni and they want to just see all the information about bird life, but also about the local accommodation providers and the local food retailers and everything. So the way that I can hopefully showcase them and give them some small thanks in that way, it is really lovely.
I have to tell you, Kat, that there was something on the Bruny Island Bird Festival website, brunibirdfestival.org.au, that really surprised me. Would you like to take a guess at what that...
I dread to think, because I've put this together in 2 a.m. in the morning most of the time. Is it something horrific?
No, not at all. And look, I've got to say, I know how much work goes into maintaining a site like that and keeping it updated. So I tips my hat to you there. But there are 21 accommodation providers that you've got listed on Bruny Island. That is, to me, that's astounding.
And that's barely any of them, to be honest. That's just me doing a shout out on the Bruni Notes' Facebook group and saying, has anyone still got a place available over these dates? Would you like to be on the list? And if they want to be on the list, they let me know through Messenger and I pop them up there. A bunch of them are probably already sold out by now. But no, this island has a lot of accommodation. It's lots of Airbnbs as well as lots of full-time businesses. So it's an island where you can really find a gorgeous spot to snuggle away in a corner. And there's so many locals' houses which are available when they go off to other climes. We have some locals who migrate up to Queensland for the cooler months of the year in Tasmania. They go up to Queensland and then their house is available for tourists to stay in. So it's a wonderful island for finding a little spot to stay.
How soft heading off to Queensland to avoid a Tasmanian winter. I don't imagine that Tanya Cochran does that because she has her Antarctica experience, so I'm sure she can tough it out. I just want to run through the roll call of the guides, just so people know who they might come across if they venture down to Bruni. There's, of course, Tanya Cochran, Dr. Tanya Cochran, who is the originator, founder, inspiration behind Anala Nature Tours, the amazing Jurassic Garden. Wouldn't it be great if government made as firm and continual commitment to the environment as Tonya has? That's fabulous. Then yes. Eric, BirdLife Tasmania. Now, 40 years researching seabirds and shorebirds. That's pretty astounding. So I'm just going through his highlights. 150 peer-reviewed papers specialising Southern Ocean seabirds. That is amazing. And 600 days at sea, mapping 8,000 shorebird nests. Now, tell me Eric doesn't know what he's talking about. Wow.
I know, enormous overachiever. But I seem to be surrounded by them. It's a bit intimidating sometimes, just having people to dinner. You have to keep this thing on topics that you're fairly got solid ground on. Otherwise, they're going to just outclass us all.
I'm pretty sure there aren't many people who would say to Eric, no, I don't think that's right. I'm pretty sure that he would always be on very firm ground. Now, let's talk about Bob Graham for a minute. BN or BIEN. What can you tell us about that? Because we haven't really expanded beyond the festival that much. So tell us about
Yeah, Bob is lovely. He and Marg were so kind to me at the first festival because when I arrived as a speaker, the accommodation I'd booked turned out that they'd forgotten I was coming and they decided to paint it that day. So I couldn't access it because it was so strong with fresh paint. And Bob and Marg said, come stay with us. And so they put me up, a total stranger, in their home, and we've been great friends ever since. And they are just the best. So Bob has fantastic knowledge of birds and habitats, but him and Marg and all the members of BN care so deeply about this island. Having bopped around the world a fair amount, one of the things that I love so much about Australia is your amazing, strong, small conservation groups that keep everything going. So the small friends of groups and these little community groups that just get out there all the time and do the weeding and do the litter picking up and do the regenerative plantings and put up the signs and just keep going in the face of often very depressing knowledge is just so inspiring. And Bob and Mark are just always done that. They've always kept going and they've always done what is best for the environment on this island. And because he has a background has a background with politics, he can really put in excellent submissions in the right kind of language that can get it put through all the stages of bureaucracy that you need to get through. So he's invaluable for his knowledge of how to navigate the system.
Bruny Island Environment Network, www.bien.org.au. Have a look. I can guarantee you will find something interesting there. Now, somebody that I'm not really familiar with their work is Dr. Andrew Hingston. Tell us about...
Yeah, I must have Andrew on one day. He's fabulous. So Andrew's one of the Anala guides, but he is also someone who has published so many papers, and he has got a lot of swift parrot knowledge, but he's also done a lot on bees. So it's really fascinating talking to him about the relationships between bees and birds, but he just has a breadth of knowledge because he's worked as a botanist mapping Tasmanian alpine vegetation, and he does a lot of work with the University of Tasmania. So one of the features of Inala is that we very much aren't just birding tours. We absolutely love birds, but we always make sure we're discussing far more. We're discussing habitats, we're discussing ecologies, and we're discussing all the trophic cascades and webs of life. And guides like Andrew are just phenomenal at really seeing that whole holistic picture so that they can just go off on any tangent and help people who come to us and already very knowledgeable onto the tours, help them tie together all the little pieces of information they've picked up in their life and just slot it like a jigsaw so that you can really see how it all fits, like Tim Lowe did in Where Song Began, taking all the things we all half knew and just making it fit together so you really just understand the system really well. Andrew's excellent at that.
It's amazing how many things come together all the time. I interviewed David Tan, who's doing his PhD in New Mexico at the moment, studying pitters, but he's a Singapore native, and he's fascinated in the origin of songbirds. And we spent a lot of time talking about Tim's book and the whole idea of where song began. These things in birds just come up over and over again. Now, of course, the other guides include the two cats, yourself and Cat Young, but there's Paul Brooks and Karen Dick. Now, again, I'm not familiar with Paul. What can you tell us about Paul, and why will going on a Paul tour be so much?
Paul and Karen are both famous for their pelagic knowledge. There yourself that there's birding and then there's subset birding, and there's some people who are very good at shorebirds and some people who are very good at pelagic birds, and they are phenomenal, both of them on pelagic birds. So they run pelagic trips off from Eaglehawk Neck, but Inala also does, and we always hire Paul and Karen, whoever's available, and their ability to call on something that's coming over the horizon that barely people have even got their binoculars on, never mind started to see diagnostic details, is amazing. And I'm yet to see them, either one of them, get it wrong. Not that they would ever stick to their guns. If they were wrong, they would immediately fess up and say otherwise. But they just always turn out to be right on every bird I've ever seen them call on. So Paul is going to do a walk, which I haven't yet put on the schedule because I haven't had the time yet. But he is also going to be doing a lecture on the ID tips and tricks for pelagic birds. So he has phenomenal photographs, and he'll just be hopefully zooming in on some of those photos and explaining some of the key things that you can look out for while you're going up and down on a boat.
Let's just note that if you're somebody who's always putting in your submissions for eBird for each of your birding jaunts, Paul's one of the blokes who ticks off your Tasmanian entries.
Yeah, and he's often the one on the Facebook groups helping people out. I don't know how he has time in the day. He has a young child and a full-time job, and he's in a band, and he's a guide. I don't know where he finds the time, but somehow he still helps everyone out with their birding ID.
What do people say, Kat? If you want something done, ask a busy person. So I think he's an example of that. And just to round off on Karen Dick, now she's an ecologist, has been working around the world, but she is a birder at heart. Like, she's part of the Tasmanian birders. What does she bring to the
Karen, like so many of the guides and the speakers, is just got wonderfully diverse knowledge. So she, as you say, has been in ecology, environmental management, research, education. She really covers the whole gamut. She's an excellent communicator. People just love her and being with her. And she's a phenomenal birder. I don't know if she's a self-described twitcher, but she definitely goes out and twitches when there's rare birds coming down to Tas. And there aren't that many of us that will leap in the car and travel to the reaches of Tas when something strange turns up. So herself and Paul and Peter Vaughan are often the ones first on the scene. So she's very much at the heart of the network of birders. And even before she ever came to work for Inala, she was very well known for her birding in Tasmania. So we're so thrilled that she's part of the Inala team. And yes, she's generously offered to help out with the festival. She's also on the board with BirdLife Tasmania and does a lot of the organising of the events that they do with that. So she's a really great people person, as well as having fabulous knowledge.
And I like what you've mentioned on the website, that you were all familiar with it. She'd been coming to the festival a long time before she was part of the Inala team. So, yeah, she's a certified bird nerd, no doubt about it.
Yes, although now I'm terrified knowing you're actually reading the things I've put on the website, and I haven't updated it to say this is her second Bruny Island Bird Festival, because she did guide at the one before as well. And then if you get to the bottom of the screen there, you're getting to the bit where I haven't even filled it in. So just calm down.
That's okay, because we've already talked about Ramit, and is there anybody who doesn't know about Sally's pedigree and track record if they're interested in Tasmanian birds? Hey, let's give a shout out to someone who is so helpful for people like yourself in providing images and whatnot, but isn't getting featured anywhere on the festival website. Now, you know who I'm talking about.
I know, the wonderful Chris Sarros. So Chris has been a huge supporter of the festival, of VN, of Inala, and anyone who knows Chris's work knows it's phenomenal photographs, but he's also got a huge generous spirit, because he gives his images to anyone who's working on conservation issues and who asks him for permission to use certain images. And so it's just incredible how far you'll see his bird images spread across Australia being used by so many conservation groups. So we're hugely appreciative of his beautiful images that I use on the website. But also in previous festivals he's been attending and doing photography workshops. And then heartbreakingly, as part of COVID and his busy life and streamlining the festival, it just wasn't so possible this time. But hopefully the next festival will have him back again.
I'm sure he would like to. Good on you, Chris. Good on you, Chris, for being so forthcoming, for helping out, because websites fail spectacularly these days if you don't have nice images. And I'm guessing he took a lot of the sort of action shots and whatnot of people doing stuff in earlier festivals.
I won't give him all the credit for that, because that's actually my partner, Brad Moriarty. Brad has been my support hugely through my 2 times running the festival. And he very kindly helped out at the last festival and took loads of the stills and made the little video, which is showcased on the front page of the website showing the 2018 festival. So that's one of his many hats that he wears, is a photographer and videographer. As much as Chris has been hugely supportive, Brad has done most of those other images.
Good.
And you're
Good
probably
on you.
absolutely right. I haven't even put Brad's name on the website. That is a major oversight. I'm on it.
I was really complimenting the eye for what makes people's shots interesting. Yeah, good on you, Brad. Good on you, Cat. Cool website. Even if you can't go to the festival. Cat, what are the dates again?
So it's the 25th to the 27th of March, 2022, which is almost only a month away. And that's giving me palpitations. So book immediately, because nearly everything here is going to sell out within the next 2 weeks. So I know that everything is more up in the air with COVID. I know that it's trickier to make choices about travel and accommodation, but the festival is nearly all outdoor events. I've made sure the numbers are very limited. Anything indoors has got limited numbers, and of course masks and a sign up on the door and all the usual precautions. So it will hopefully be a very safe and fantastic festival, even if you haven't been venturing out to things so far. This is one you might want to venture out.
I think I need to let people know too that if they're not seasoned travellers, that on Bruni there's no public transport, no taxi service. Make sure you are aware of that. Is anybody doing Uber or something similar on the island? Because it's a fair walk from North Bruni to South Bruni, but of course you can take your own car if you've come down from the mainland on the ferry. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So you just drive onto the island in your own car, and you don't even need a 4-wheel drive. A couple of the roads on Bruni are non-sealed roads, but as long as you go slow, they aren't tough to drive on. The trickiest road for potholes is the little last stretch down to the lighthouse. We haven't put any events down at the end of that road specifically so that people didn't have to drive it unless they wish to. But even going slow on that road is very manageable, even in your standard We Hire car. But no Uber, as far as I know. I think they would only be busy for the one moment where it's please drop me off for dinner and please pick me up from dinner. I don't know if they get enough work the rest of the day. Plus, this island is made up of a lot of retired people who have absolutely zero desire to be Ubering anybody anywhere.
Too right. Now, the last thing that I think we need to talk about with the festival, and this is probably really great for kids and the creative folk amongst us, the Bruny Bird Beanie Competition.
Yes. So this is a brand new event, and it is being inspired by the wonderful Professor Jay Johnson. She suggested this idea and got it off the ground immediately, and even provided the prizes, although she told me not to say that. And she is so phenomenal because it has taken light. People love the idea. So it is either you knit or you crochet or you felt or you sew, anything at all, and you make it into a bird beanie. Now, what that bird beanie is, whether it is actually a bird or whether it's just inspired by the feeling of bird, is totally up to you. We've made 4 categories where we'll have 4 prizes. And so it's endemic birds, parts of Tasmania is one. One is threatened species. One is for under 16s. And the final one is just the most outlandish category that can pretty much fit anything in. It's the wildest design beanie. So I'm sure that anything anyone comes up with will fit into one of those categories. And we'll just display them all at the Adventure Bay Hall, the HQ. And then there'll be a prize as well for the one that gets voted on, same as the art exhibition. There'll be a People's Choice Prize on the day. And then you can sell the beanie if you wish, just like you would an art piece. You don't have to sell it. I can send it back to people if they prefer, but you can sell it and get the money for yourself. And we're not saying what the price should be. We've guessed that maybe between $20-$60, depending on what you rate your own work as. And I think there's going to be some fabulous creations coming in.
And I really like what you've called the under 16 category, the fledgling beanie. Very good. Very good. Now, Kat, are you up to tackle the bird emergency questions?
Oh, yes.
All right. Let's see how you go. Kat, what is your field guide of choice?
The Big Blue Bible is the one I use the most. The CSIRO one. I know it's not really a field guide. It's not going to fit in any pocket. It barely fits in a bag, but it's the one I use.
Fabulous, fabulous. Of course, we've all got that on our shelves, accompanied by 1,000 other books, no doubt. What is your essential piece of kit when you're out in the field, Kat?
Other than my lovely little Zeiss binoculars, I'd say it's the strap. I am so in love with wearing that strap harness that I can't remember when I ever didn't. And I just think it's mad now when I see people without one. So pretty much every American birder and every British birder just wears the harnesses these days. And yet I don't see so many Australians wearing it. Pretty much every person, after I've given them the hard sell on how comfortable it is and how easy it is to have both your binoculars and your camera at the same time when you've got the harness on, then goes away and buys one. And as soon as you can get them for like $12 on eBay and it does your shoulders the world of good, they're just the best thing ever.
Kat, I'd never really thought about this before, but one of my enduring memories of birding as a kid, because I had a pair of hand-me-down binoculars from a keen racecourse goer, was how incredibly sore my neck would be after a long day pointing the binoculars skyward. So, yeah, that's the first, Kat. Nobody has told me about the harness. Have you got a recommendation for what type of harness someone should be looking for?
Not at all. My friend Katie just got herself a Swato one, which it looks very flashy, but you can get them super cheap. And the thing is that often they don't come up as a birding tool when you're looking for them. I think I got mine by typing in hunting harness, because I think quite a lot of hunters use them for their kit, their bow and arrows or whatever they've got on them.
Yeah, I was going to say that so much of the really cool birding gadgets are actually marketed by people who like to splatter animals all over the joint. So I know that's super weird, but there we go. Kat, you've been around the traps, around the world. Where's your favourite place that you've ever been birding?
Most horrible question, Grant. Picking my children. But the Falkland Islands. I just can't go past the Falklands. I love the Falklands so much. And when I was working there as a tour guide, the 5 different species of penguin that we had on our little island, Pebble Island, where only 6 of us lived, was just phenomenal to be able to go out in one day and have the Magellanic, the rockhopper, the macaroni, the king penguin coming ashore to molt. It was just taking. If I'm sitting in a dentist chair and I need to put my mind elsewhere, I put it with the penguins on Pebble Island, because that just makes my heart.
Who doesn't love a penguin, hey? Who doesn't love a penguin? Coming up, I'll do a plug. I just did an interview with Ursula Ellenberg, who is one of the principals of the Tawaki project in New Zealand, which is a Fiordland crested penguin. So if you're a penguin head, look out for the feed. There's a bit of penguin stuff coming up. Kat, what's your bucket list birding location? Somewhere you are itching to go.
I think I have to return to South America. I think I haven't. I only ever did a little bit of Chile and a little bit of Argentina and a bit of Patagonia. And it's those other parts of South America that are calling me. So I would very much love to get to places like Bolivia and really see some of the phenomenal stuff there. Yes, and every guest gives me one more thing for the list that they say I must go to. So my list is infinite. And most recently, someone has been insisting that, of course, I go to the Galapagos. And it's on all our lists. So maybe the Galapagos too.
Well, following on from that, what's your bucket list bird?
Well, I'm not a lister, you see. I have never had a list, and I don't really think I have one. But one that I keep looking at in photos and thinking, you are just too beautiful for words. Is it the violet-chested roller in Africa? Am I getting that right? Violet something?
I think it's either violet-chested or violet-breasted, I think. And, of course, rollers. In Australia, if you're my age, you would be talking about the dollar bird.
Yes, and an African birder was telling me that they're quite common there. So I shouldn't be too hard for me to get this bucket list bird of mine. They're just stupidly beautiful.
Fabulous. Here's the really hard question, Cat. What's your favourite bird? What's the best bird?
What's the best bird? I think I've already alluded to it. I think it is the penguin. I dabble in other birds. I do love the pink robin oh so deeply. I am completely smitten with the beautiful firetail. But all the time, it's the penguins, I think, who have my heart. And probably out of them all, it's the Magellanics, the ones in the Falklands that live because they would come to the surface and sing in the evenings. And that song would echo out across the landscape in the sea mist and the still air after the raging winds had died down. And you felt like there was nowhere else on the planet that you wanted to be than right there with those penguins. And so they're my favorite.
Fantastic. Well, you successfully negotiated the bird emergency questions there, Kat. Let's just to round it off, tell people where they need to go to make a booking, or if they know they can't come, to browse around and plan for the next festival. Let's go with the website, Kat. That's your...
Okay, it's brunibirdfestival.org.au. And once you're on there, hopefully it's super intuitive to find your way to the program and to the bookings page. But if you are still able to participate a month out, I would still very much love people to send in artworks for the art festival. We haven't yet filled up all our walls. Beanies for the Beanie Bird competition. And if you're a Bruny Islander and listening to this, and then I'm still very much looking for people to be in the gatepost sculpture competition, which we didn't yet chat about, but people take recycled material and upcycled material and they make beautiful bird sculptures and they put them at the end of their driveway, and then everyone in the festival as they're driving around the island sees all this wonderful artwork just out and about. And so much of it stays there in between festivals and just becomes part of the island. It's really glorious. But there's so many ways you can be involved. And yes, I don't know when the next one will be. It may be 2 years on. It may be March. It may be October. We'll make the decision after this festival when we all breathing again.
Absolutely. And look, Kat, I'm sorry to say I hadn't realised or I hadn't noticed the Gatepost Festival, because there is so much. There is already so much going on the website and obviously on the festival. Kat, it's been a pleasure to meet you and to be acquainted now with the other famous Tasmanian cat. I hope it's a great success. I'm sure it will be. Boy, I'm so impressed with the effort, the commitment of Inala generally. I think, imagine if every region in Australia or every region in the world had a business and a team as committed to the principles of conservation and sharing the delights of their community, their wild community, their natural community, as Bruny Islanders have got. It's great. I congratulate you and the whole team. Thanks for joining us, Kat. It's been great. This has been So this has been the Bird Emergency Bruny Island edition. I'm Grant Williams. That's been Cat Davidson. Thanks for the pleasure of your company. I hope you will join us again on all of the kind of social outlets and whatnot. Oh, there we go, Cat. Do you want to put a social out there for yourself? Are you out there Twittering or Facebooking yourself?
No, I'm a major lurker. I have the accounts, but I never post. I just lurk and listen to everybody else twittering away. So go to the festival ones instead. They're far more interesting. And Catherine Young has got a much, much better Twitter feed than me. Follow her.
Yeah, follow Cat. And hey, if you want to follow me with some ranty stuff as well as I love to share all the good things I see on Twitter. At Bird Emergency. Not the Bird Emergency, just at Bird Emergency. That's where you'll find me. Thanks, everybody. See you, hear you, get in your ears next time. Bye.